Swiss Frankie.
Yeah, full tribe in the building. Full tribe static addict. Melchizedek media. Melchizedek music.
www.swissfrankie.com.
Stay focused. Yeah, how what we choose, we worship in spirit and truth. Stay focused, don't be a fool. Study to show thyself approved. Stay focused, it's for like blood in my chest. The word manifested in flesh. Stay focused, Hebrew we got next. I preach the Melchizedek. Stay focused. Yeah, how what we choose, we worship in spirit and truth. Stay focused, don't be a fool. Study to show thyself approved. Stay focused, it's for like blood in my chest. The word manifested in flesh. Stay focused, Hebrew we got next. So never abandon your post.
Keep your eyes on the prize. I'm not talking about no dollar sign. The kingdom's at hand, that's the plan, my man. Spiritual gifts is what I store up. Waiting for the sun to show up. Then Babylon gon' burn up, and them gold streets gon' turn up. There'll be love for thy neighbor, will be heavenly favor. Not you love's what you get when you live in the script. So tune in to this vibration. We from his holy nation, here to give words to the ears that hear. Screaming Yahshua's coming till he appears. Cry loud and spare not brute. Now that scripture strong in the faith in this heavenly race. Washed by the blood of Yahweh Shah, that's grace.
Stay focused. Yeah, how what we choose, we worship in spirit and truth. Stay focused, don't be a fool. Study to show thyself approved. Stay focused, it's for like blood in my chest. The word manifested in flesh. Stay focused, Hebrew we got next. I preach the Melchizedek. Stay focused. Yeah, how what we choose, we worship in spirit and truth. Stay focused, don't be a fool. Study to show thyself approved. Stay focused, it's for like blood in my chest. The word manifested in flesh. Stay focused, Hebrew we got next. So never abandon your post.
It's been a long time. I shouldn't have left you without a dope script to precept to, septu, freaky. I'm playing, family. Shalom. It's your little brother Benign coming at you with another video. I know it's been a minute, but your mans is back. Did you miss me? Nah, but on the real, I said I was going to make a series of videos leading up to the revealing of who I believe to be the beast, the whore who rides the beast, and the 10 horns / toes in the book of Revelation in Daniel chapter 2. The series started off with the first video called 10 Toes Found. In this video, we take a look at Daniel's dream where he prophesies the coming 4 empires that shall rule the world. Daniel dreamed of a statue made of gold, silver, bronze, iron, and 10 toes made of both iron and miry clay. We showed how the 4 metals decreased in value, showing how each succeeding empire would be inferior to the kingdom before them. Daniel had given us a starting point to find out who are those kingdoms that make up his statue. In chapter 2, Daniel tells us that the head of gold is Nebuchadnezzar's kingdom. From there, we use the same formula to find the kingdoms who came after Nebuchadnezzar's kingdom. The formula used was that whoever conquered Babylon would be the silver, whomever conquered the silver will be the bronze, whoever conquered the bronze will be the iron, and whomever conquered the iron would be the miry clay that would mix with the iron, becoming a kingdom made partly of iron and partly of miry clay. We showed how it was the Medes and the Persians who sacked Babylon, and how it was the Macedonian Greeks who conquered the Persians. We showed how the Greeks were overthrown by the Romans, and how Rome was sacked by a multitude of barbaric tribes from the east of the Danube River, and how those tribes took over the lands that was once held by Rome and began to mix with the inhabitants of those lands, creating a kingdom made of both iron and miry clay that we call Western Europe today. The second video, called The Dark Ages, was meant to solidify the barbarian kingdoms being the successors of the Roman Empire, and to show where the iron started to mix with the miry clay, and produce a kingdom that was half Roman and half Norsemen, aka barbarians. The purpose of the third video, called Iron and Clay, was to show the end result of the iron mixing with the miry clay, or the Roman culture mixing with the Norseman culture. Like how the calendar is half Roman and half Norseman, with the names of the months being named after Roman gods in Latin numerals, which was the language of the Romans, to the days of the weeks being majorly named after the Norse gods, such as Monin, Tus, Odin or Woden, Thor, and Freya. Your English name of the days in the left column come from the English-Saxon language in the far right column. We also showed how all the major holidays of the Western world are half Roman and half Norse traditions, including Christmas, Easter, New Year's, Valentine's Day, and Halloween, and how the English language, which is the most commonly spoken language of the world, is made of the Roman tongue of Latin and the barbaric tongues of Germanic and French, which is also Germanic in its core. Those 3 videos make up about 4 hours of me proving that the 10 toes in Daniel chapter 2, which are also the 10 horns in Revelation, are in fact the Western European nations of today. This 4th video will be a prelude to the videos to come on who is the whore who rides the beast that the book of Revelation calls the daughter of Babylon. There are 4 books that prophesy the destruction of Babylon: the book of Psalms, the book of Isaiah, the book of Jeremiah, and the book of Revelation. It is clear that the prophecies of Babylon written in Revelation hasn't come to pass yet. But the question is, if the prophecies of Babylon written in the other 3 books have already come to pass when the Neo-Babylonian Empire fell in the 6th century BC, or if those prophecies were written for future Babylon, aka Mystery Babylon, aka the daughter of Babylon. In order to continue our search for the whore who rides the beast, we must find the actor who fits all prophecies given to the Babylon to come. In order to do that, we have to determine what prophecies were meant for ancient Babylon and what prophecies were meant for the future Babylon. Therefore, we must vet the prophecies written particularly in the books of Isaiah and Jeremiah to see if they are past or present, specifically chapters such as Isaiah 47, Jeremiah 50, and Jeremiah 51. Jeremiah was a prophet that lived during the 7th and 6th century BC, from 650 BC to 570 BC. He prophesied about the coming of Nebuchadnezzar, the very same Nebuchadnezzar whose dream was interpreted by Daniel. Jeremiah got to see most of his prophecies come to pass, and actually witnessed the southern kingdom of Judah getting carried away captive by Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon. Everything prophesied of the coming of Nebuchadnezzar, to the carrying away of the king and princes, to the destruction of the temple, happened just as the Most High said it would through the mouth of Jeremiah. But what about the fall of Babylon? When Jeremiah prophesied the burden of Babylon, was he talking of the same Babylon that he prophesied would carry Judah away? And if so, did those things happen the way that Jeremiah said that they would? The reason why this is important is because the Most High told us through the mouth of Moses that if a prophet prophesies in the Most High's name, and that thing does not come to pass, then the Most High didn't say it. That prophet has spoken presumptuously, and the penalty for speaking presumptuously in the name of the Most High is death. Deuteronomy chapter 18, verses 20 through 22 reads, "But the prophet which shall presume to speak a word in my name, which I have not commanded him to speak, or that shall speak in the name of other gods, even that prophet shall die. And if thou say in thine heart, how shall we know the word which Yahuwah has not spoken?" When a prophet speaketh in the name of Yah, if the thing follow not, nor come to pass, that is the thing which Yah has not spoken. But the prophet has spoken it presumptuously. Thou shalt not be afraid of him. So if what Jeremiah said hasn't or will not come to pass, then we must find where he is buried, dig up his bones, and set them on fire. Then take out all of his and his scribe Baruch's writings and throw them in the trash. Now, there are 52 chapters in the book of Jeremiah, but only 2 speaks of the fall of Babylon, while the other 50 speak on the rise of Nebuchadnezzar's Babylon. We are going to start from the top of chapter 50 and go through each prophecy until the end of chapter 51. I'm going to read the 2 chapters for those who want full context. For those who don't have the time, please fast forward a little bit and we'll meet you in the future. Jeremiah chapter 50, starting at verse 1. The word that Yah spake against Babylon and against the land of the Chaldeans by Jeremiah the prophet. Declare ye among the nations, and publish, and set up a standard. Publish, and conceal not. Say, Babylon is taken, Baal is confounded. Merodach is broken in pieces. Her idols are confounded. Her images are broken in pieces. For out of the north there come up a nation against her, which shall make her land desolate, and none shall dwell therein. They shall remove, they shall depart, both man and beast. In those days, and in that time, saith Yah, the children of Israel shall come, they and the children of Judah together, going and weeping. They shall go and seek Yah, their Elohim. They shall ask the way to Zion with their faces thitherward, saying, Come, and let us join ourselves to Yah in a perpetual covenant that shall not be forgotten. My people have been lost sheep. Their shepherds have caused them to go astray. They have turned them away on the mountains. They have gone from mountain to hill. They have forgotten their resting place. All that found them have devoured them. And their adversaries said, We offend not, because they have sinned against Yah, the habitation of justice, even Yah, the hope of their fathers. Remove out of the midst of Babylon, and go forth out of the land of the Chaldeans, and be as the he-goat before the flock. For lo, I will rise and cause to come up against Babylon an assembly of great nations from the north country, and they shall set themselves in array against her. From thence she shall be taken. Their arrows shall be as a mighty expert man. None shall return in vain. And Chaldea shall be a spoil. All that spoil her shall be satisfied, saith Yah. Because ye were glad, because ye rejoice, O ye destroyers of mine heritage, because ye are grown fat as the heifer at grass, and below as bulls. Your mother shall be sore confounded. She that bare you shall be ashamed. Behold, the hindermost of the nations shall be a wilderness, a dry land, and a desert. Because of the wrath of Yah, it shall not be inhabited, but it shall be wholly desolate. Everyone that goeth by Babylon shall be astonished, and hiss at all her plagues. Put yourselves in array against Babylon round about. All ye that bend the bow, shoot at her. Spare no arrows, for she hath sinned against Yah. Shout against her round about. She hath given her hand. Her foundations are fallen. Her walls are thrown down. For it is the vengeance of Yah. Take vengeance upon her. As she has done, do unto her. Cut off the sower from Babylon, and him that handleth the sickle in the time of the harvest. For fear of the oppressing sword, they shall turn every one to his people, and they shall flee every one to his own land. Israel is a scattered sheep. The lions have driven him away. First the king of Assyria hath devoured him, and last this Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, has broken his bones. Therefore thus saith Yah of hosts, the Elohim of Israel, Behold, I will punish the king of Babylon and his land, as I have punished the king of Assyria. And I will bring Israel again to his habitation, and he shall feed on the Carmel and Bashan, and his soul shall be satisfied upon Mount Ephraim and Gilead. In those days, and in that time, saith Yah, the iniquity of Israel shall be sought for, and there shall be none, and the sins of Judah, and they shall not be found, for I will pardon them whom I reserve. Go up against the land of Merathaim, even against it, and against the inhabitants of Pekod. Waste and utterly destroy after them, saith Yah, and do according to all that I commanded thee. A sound of battle is in the land, and of great destruction. How is the hammer of the whole earth cut asunder and broken? How is Babylon become a desolation among the nations? I have laid a snare for thee, and thou art also taken, O Babylon, and thou wast not aware. Thou art found, and also caught, because thou hast striven against Yah. Yah hath opened his armory, and hath brought forth the weapons of his indignation. For this is the work of Yah, Elohim of hosts, in the land of the Chaldeans. Come against her from the uttermost border. Open her storehouses, cast her up as heaps, and destroy her utterly. Let nothing of her be left. Slay all her bullocks. Let them go down to the slaughter. Woe unto them, for their day is come, the time of their visitation. The voice of them that flee and escape out of the land of Babylon, to declare in Zion the vengeance of Yah, our Elohim, the vengeance of his temple. Call together the archers against Babylon. All ye that bend the bow, camp against it round about. Let none thereof escape. Recompense her according to her work, according to all that she hath done, do unto her. For she hath been proud against Yah, against the Holy One of Israel. Therefore shall her young men fall in the streets, and all her men of war shall be cut off in that day, saith Yah. Behold, I am against thee, O thou most proud, saith Yah, Elohim of hosts. For thy day is come, the time that I will visit thee, and the most proud shall stumble and fall, and none shall raise him up. And I will kindle a fire in his cities, and it shall devour all round about him. Thus saith Yah of hosts, the children of Israel and the children of Judah were oppressed together, and all that took them captive held them fast. They refused to let them go. Their Redeemer is strong. Yah of hosts is his name. He shall thoroughly plead their cause, that he may give rest to the land and disquiet the inhabitants of Babylon. A sword is upon the Chaldeans, saith Yah, and upon the inhabitants of Babylon, and upon her princes, and upon her wise men. A sword is upon the liars, and they shall dote. A sword is upon her mighty men, and they shall be dismayed. A sword is upon their horses, and upon their chariots, and upon all the mingled people that are in the midst of her, and they shall become as a woman. A sword is upon her treasures, and they shall be robbed. A drought is upon her waters, and they shall be dried up. For it is the land of graven images, and they are mad upon their idols. Therefore, the wild beasts of the desert with the wild beasts of the islands shall dwell there, and the owls shall dwell therein, and it shall be no more inhabited forever. Neither shall it be dwelt in from generation to generation. As Elohim overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah, and the neighbor cities thereof, saith Yah, so shall no man abide there, neither shall any son of man dwell therein. Behold, a people shall come from the north, and a great nation, and many kings shall be raised up from the coast of the earth. They shall hold the bow and the lance. They are cruel, and will not show mercy. Their voice shall roar like the sea, and they shall ride upon horses, every one put in array, like a man to the battle. Against thee, O daughter of Babylon. The king of Babylon hath heard the report of them, and his hands waxed feeble. Anguish took hold of him, and pangs as of a woman in travail. Behold, he shall come up like a lion from the swelling of Jordan unto the habitation of the strong. But I will make them suddenly run away from her. And who is a chosen man, that I may appoint over her? For who is like me, And who will appoint me the time? And who is that shepherd that will stand before me? Therefore, hear ye the counsel of Yah, that he have taken against Babylon and his purposes, that he has purposed against the land of the Chaldeans. Surely the least of the flock shall draw them out. Surely he shall make their habitation desolate with them. At the noise of the taking of Babylon, the earth is moved, and the cry is heard among the nations. Jeremiah chapter 51, starting at verse 1. Thus saith Yah, behold, I will raise up against Babylon, and against them that dwell in the midst of them, that rise up against me, a destroying wind, and will send unto Babylon fanners, that shall fan her, and shall empty her land. For in the day of trouble they shall be against her round about. Against him that bendeth, let the archer bend his bow, and against him that lifteth himself up in his brigadier, and spare ye not her young men. Destroy ye utterly all her host. Thus the slain shall fall in the land of the Chaldeans, and they that are thrust through in her streets, for Israel have not been forsaken, nor Judah of his Elohim, of the Lord of hosts, though their land was filled with sin against the Holy One of Israel. Flee out of the midst of Babylon, and deliver every man his soul. Be not cut off in her iniquity, for this is the time of Yah's vengeance. He will render unto her a recompense. Babylon hath been a golden cup in Yah's hand, that made all the earth drunken. The nations have drunken of her wine, therefore the nations are mad. Babylon is suddenly fallen and destroyed. Howl for her, take balm for her pain. If so be, she may be healed. We would have healed Babylon, but she is not healed. Forsake her, and let us go every one into his own country. For her judgment reacheth unto heaven, and is lifted up even to the skies. Yah has brought forth our righteousness. Come, and let us declare in Zion the work of Yah, our Elohim. Make bright the arrows, gather the shields. Yah has raised up the spirit of the kings of the Medes for his devices against Babylon, to destroy it, because it is the vengeance of Yah, the vengeance of his temple. Set up the standard upon the walls of Babylon. Make the watch strong. Set up the watchmen. Prepare for the ambushes. For Yah hath both devised and done that which he speak against the inhabitants of Babylon. O thou that dwellest upon many waters, abundant in treasures, thine end is come, and the measure of thy covetousness. Yah of hosts hath sworn by himself, saying, surely I will fill thee with men, as with caterpillars, and they shall lift up a shout against thee. He hath made the earth by his power, he has established the world by his wisdom, and hath stretched out the heaven by his understanding. When he uttereth his voice, there is a multitude of waters in the heaven, and he causes the vapors to ascend from the ends of the earth. He maketh lightnings with the rain, and bringeth forth the wind out of his treasures. Every man is brutish by his knowledge. Every founder is confounded by the graven image. For his molten image is falsehood, and there is no breath in them. They are vanity, the work of errors. In the time of their visitation, they shall perish. The portion of Jacob is not like them, for he is the former of all things, and Israel is the rod of his inheritance. Yah of hosts is his name. Thou art my battle axe and weapons of war, for with thee will I break in pieces the nations, and with thee will I destroy kingdoms, and with thee will I break in pieces the horse and his rider, and with thee I will break in pieces the chariot and his rider. With thee also will I break in pieces man and woman, and with thee I will break in pieces old and young, and with thee will I break in pieces the young man and the maid. I will also break in pieces with thee the shepherd and his flock, And with thee will I break in pieces the husbandman and his yoke of oxen. And with thee will I break in pieces captains and rulers. And I will render unto Babylon and to all the inhabitants of Chaldea all their evil that they have done in Zion in your sight, saith Yah. Behold, I am against thee, O destroying mountain, saith Yah, which destroyeth all the earth. And I will stretch out my hand upon thee, and roll thee down from the rocks, and will make thee a burnt mountain. And they shall not take of thee a stone for a corner, nor a stone for foundations, but thou shalt be desolate forever, saith Yah. Set up a standard in the land, blow the trumpet amongst the nations, prepare the nations against her, call together against her the kingdoms of Ararat, Mini, and the Ashkenaz. Appoint a captain against her. Cause the horses to come up as the rough caterpillars. Prepare against her the nations with the kings of the Medes, the captains thereof, and all the rulers thereof, and all the land of his dominion. And the land shall tremble in sorrow, for every purpose of Yah shall be performed against Babylon, to make the land of Babylon a desolation without inhabitant. The mighty men of Babylon have forborne to fight. They have remained in their holds. Their might have failed. They became as women. They have burnt her dwelling places. Her bars are broken. One post shall run to meet another, and one messenger to meet another, to show the king of Babylon that his city is taken at one end, and that the passages are stopped, and that the reeds they have burnt with fire, and the men of war are affrighted. For thus saith Yah of hosts, the Elohim of Israel, the daughter of Babylon is like a threshing floor. It is time to thresh her, yet a little while, and the time of her harvest shall come. Nebuchadnezzar the king of Babylon hath devoured me. He hath crushed me. He hath made me an empty vessel. He hath swallowed me up like a dragon. He hath filled his belly with my delicates. He hath cast me out. The violence done to me and to my flesh be upon Babylon, shall the inhabitants of Zion say, and my blood upon the inhabitants of Chaldea, shall Jerusalem say. Therefore, thus saith Yah, behold, I will plead thy cause, and take vengeance for thee, and I will dry up her sea, and make her springs dry. And Babylon shall become heaps, a dwelling place for dragons, an astonishment and an hissing, without an inhabitant. They shall roar together like lions. They shall yell as lions' whelps. In their heart I will make their feast, and I will make them drunken, that they may rejoice and sleep a perpetual sleep, and not wake, saith Yah. I will bring them down like lambs to the slaughter, like rams with the he-goats. How is Shishak taken? And how is the praise of the whole earth surprised? How is Babylon become an astonishment among the nations? The sea is come upon Babylon. She is covered with the multitude of the waves thereof. Her cities are a desolation, a dry land, and a wilderness, a land wherein no man dwelleth, neither doth any son of man pass thereby. And I will punish Baal in Babylon, and I will bring forth out of his mouth that which he hath swallowed up. And the nations shall not flow together any more unto him. Yea, the wall of Babylon shall fall. My people, go ye out of the midst of her, and deliver ye every man his soul from the fierce anger of Yah. And lest your hearts faint, and ye fear for the rumor that shall be heard in the land. A rumor shall both come 1 year, and after that in another year shall come a rumor, and violence in the land, ruler against ruler. Therefore, behold, the days come that I will do judgment upon the graven images of Babylon, and her whole land shall be confounded, and all her slain shall fall in the midst of her. Then the heaven and the earth, and all that is therein, shall sing for Babylon. For the spoiler shall come unto her from the north, saith Yah. As Babylon hath caused the slain of Israel to fall, so at Babylon shall fall the slain of all the earth. Ye that have escaped the sword, go away, stand not still. Remember Yah afar off, and let Jerusalem come into your mind. We are confounded, because we have heard reproach. Shame have covered our faces, for strangers are come into the sanctuaries of Yah's house. Wherefore, behold, the days come, saith Yah, that I will do judgment upon her graven images, and through all her land the wounded shall groan. Though Babylon should mount up to heaven, and though she should fortify the height of her strength, yet from me shall spoilers come unto her, saith Yah. A sound of cry cometh from Babylon, and great destruction from the land of the Chaldeans, because Yah hath spoiled Babylon, and destroyed out of her the great voice, when her waves do roar like great waters. A noise of their voices is uttered, because the spoiler is come upon her, even upon Babylon, and her mighty men are taken. Every one of their bows is broken, for Yah Elohim of recompenses shall surely requite. And I will make drunk her princes, and her wise men, her captains, and her rulers, and her mighty men, and they shall sleep a perpetual sleep, and not wake, saith the King, whose name is Yah of hosts. Thus saith Yah of hosts, the broad walls of Babylon shall be utterly broken, and her high gates shall be burned with fire, and the people shall labor in vain, and the folk in the fire, and they shall be weary. The word which Jeremiah the prophet commanded Sariah, the son of Neriah, the son of Maaseiah, when he went with Zedekiah, the king of Judah, into Babylon in the 4th year of his reign. And this Sariah was a quiet prince. So Jeremiah wrote in a book all the evils that should come upon Babylon, even all these words that are written against Babylon. And Jeremiah said to Sariah, when thou comest to Babylon, and shalt see, and shalt read all these words, then shalt thou say, O Yah, thou hast spoken against this place, to cut it off, that none shall remain in it, neither man nor beast, but that it shall be desolate forever. And it shall be, when thou hast made an end of reading this book, that thou shalt bind a stone to it, and cast it into the midst of the Euphrates. And thou shalt say, thus shall Babylon sink, and shall not rise from the evil that I will bring upon her, and they shall be weary. Thus far are the words of Jeremiah. So I took it upon myself to break down those 2 chapters of Jeremiah into basically 6 categories. Babylon being desolate, how Babylon became desolate, the armies from the north, the Chaldeans, Israel and Judah coming out of Babylon together, and the fall of Marduk, aka Baal, aka Baal. These are the verses that we are going to focus on in each of those categories, starting with Babylon being desolate. Jeremiah chapter 50 verse 3 says that a nation from the north shall come and make her land desolate. I want to point out that the actual people who came against her will be the ones who shall make her desolate. Verse 13 of the same chapter says that it shall not be inhabited and completely desolate. Verse 16 tells us that before Babylon actually falls, people shall flee from there and return to their homeland. In other words, they heard that the war was coming and fled back to their home countries beforehand. Verse 26 said that she shall be utterly destroyed, and nothing be left of her, that even the bullocks would be slaughtered. Verse 37 tells us that all the people of Babylon shall be destroyed, not just her mighty men, but even her citizens. Chapter 50, verse 45 confirms again that the people that he sends against Babylon are the very ones that will make her desolate. Now, Jeremiah 51 repeats what was said in the chapter prior, that everyone in the city shall be destroyed, not just the army, but the citizens or everyone found within her. Remember, chapter 50 told us that some people will leave before the attack, and return to their homeland because of fear of the oppressing sword. The ones who are left behind shall all be thrust through. Verse 9 confirms every person returning to their homeland prior to the war that will leave Babylon desolate. Jeremiah chapters 50 and 51 both prophesies of a great fall of Babylon, one that would be heard throughout the world. The cities of Babylon burned to the ground, total destruction without any survivors. This should be a great fall that should go down in history. But did this happen to Babylon? Well, it's a yes and no answer to that question. A lot of those things has happened to Babylon at one time or another. And no one can argue if ancient Babylon is desolate today, without man or beast living there. This is the number one and greatest evidence of the prophecies of Jeremiah 50 and 51 has happened to ancient Babylon. The fact that it is desolate today. But if the desolation prophesied happened as it was prophesied, then we should hear stories of its defeat, like the one Sennacherib wrote about when he conquered Babylon.
Sennacherib hated Babylon and all who called themselves Babylonians. With perhaps the same army he commanded against his enemies at Halule, Sennacherib surrounded Babylon and waited for Meshizub-Marduk, the Elamite-backed king of Babylon, to capitulate. Several months went by, but the city did not surrender despite the fact that Babylon's residents were rapidly running out of food. A Babylonian document dated to the summer of 690 BC records just how desperate the situation had become. In the reign of Meshizub-Marduk, king of Babylon, there was siege, famine, hunger, starvation, and hard times in the land. Everything had changed and become non-existent. 1 shekel of silver was worth 2 liters of barley. The city gates were locked, and there was no exit in all 4 directions. The corpses of people filled the squares of Babylon because there was no one to bury them. After a 15-month siege, in the fall of 689 BC, the Assyrians broke through Babylon's defenses and took the city. What happened next, according to Sennacherib's own inscriptions, was a vengeful bloodbath. I moved swiftly against Babylon, whose destruction I strove for, and like the onset of a storm, I attacked. Like a mist, I enveloped it. I filled the city with their corpses. Meshizub-Marduk, king of Babylon, together with his family, I carried off alive to my country. The property of that city, silver, gold, precious stones, goods, possessions, I delivered into the hands of my people, and they made it their own. The gods that dwell inside, the hands of my people acquired them, and they broke them up, and they took their goods and property. The city and its houses, from its foundations to its parapets, I swept away. I demolished. I burned with fire. The wall and the outer wall, the temples and the gods, the ziggurat of mud brick and earth, as many as there were, I tore down and deposited them into the Aratu Canal. In the midst of that city, I dug ditches and flooded its ground with water. The form of its foundations I destroyed, and I caused its devastation to exceed that of any flood, so that in later days, the ground of that city, its temples, its gods, would be forgotten. Others had also conquered and sacked Babylon, but none seemed to have deliberately caused as much damage and gloat about it as Sennacherib. As for Meshizub-Marduk and his family, they were deported to Nineveh, and though their exact fate is never mentioned, one can safely assume that it wasn't good. Later generations of Babylonians would never forget Sennacherib's cruelty and wanton destruction of their glorious city, which for them was the center of the world. Unlike his three predecessors, he never took the title King of Babylon, nor did he make any plans to rebuild the city and the sacred Isagila. In fact, he wanted its prestige and influence to diminish. One of the ways he did this was to take the Babylonian epic Enuma Elish and make a new official version where the national Assyrian god Ashur replaced Marduk.
Sennacherib's story sounds just as Jeremiah had prophesied, from the cities being surrounded to the dead bodies laying in the streets. Even Marduk, the god of Babylon, was confounded, torn down, and replaced with the Assyrians' god. Sennacherib's story, coupled with the fact that ancient Babylon is desolate today, proves that Jeremiah 50 and 51 happened already, correct? Well, not exactly. See, there is a slight problem. Sennacherib was a king of Assyria, and although Assyria is to the north of Babylon, this is not the thing that Yah was talking about. How do we know? Jeremiah was a prophet that lived during the 7th and 6th century BC, from 650 to 570 BC. By the time Jeremiah was prophesying of the fall of Babylon, the events taking place by Sennacherib had already happened. Sennacherib's reign ended in 681 BC, 30 years before Jeremiah was born. Nebuchadnezzar hadn't laid siege to Jerusalem till 597 BC, almost 100 years after Sennacherib died. The temple wasn't destroyed until 587 BC. Surely Jeremiah wasn't prophesying about something that happened before he was born. Babylon wasn't even in full power at the time that Sennacherib, king of Assyria, sacked it. Nebuchadnezzar would rise roughly 80 years after Sennacherib, and his kingdom will be conquered by the Persian king Cyrus the Great. Now Jeremiah prophesied of a very bloody fall of Babylon, a fall that would shock the world to wonder how the hammer of the whole earth is cut asunder. People would flee Babylon screaming, "The sword is coming, the sword is coming." The walls will be thrown down and the gates burned. The streets will be filled with bodies, the same way Sennacherib had done just 150 so years prior. But history tells us something different. In fact, it tells us the complete opposite. It tells us that Cyrus took Babylon with little to no fight, that there may have been a brief scuffle in the city of Opis, but that Cyrus had basically walked into Babylon, being greeted and cheered by the people. The people opened the gates and let him in, as opposed to being slaughtered in the streets and left for dead like Jeremiah prophesied. The people were tired of their current king Nabonidus. He had spent most of his time in Arabia and had left the kingdom under the rule of his son Belshazzar. The people, along with the priests of Babylon, were angry that the king of Nabonidus had forsaken the nation's god Marduk and had chosen the moon god Sin instead. When Cyrus and his Persian army came, Cyrus claimed to be sent by Marduk to restore Marduk to his rightful place as the god of Babylon. So the people let him in and cheered him on. This story is recorded by both the Persians and the Babylonians.
After a battle near the city of Opis on the Tigris River, where he encountered some resistance, Cyrus made his way towards Babylon, where a very unpopular Nabonidus was bracing for a long siege. In an interesting turn of events, the Babylonian governor of the province of Gutium defected to the Persian side and marched with his men alongside Cyrus to Babylon. According to the so-called Nabonidus Chronicle, the Persians had little trouble taking the city. In the month Tashritu, on the 14th day, Sippar was captured without battle. Nabonidus fled. On the 16th day, Gubaru, governor of Gutium, and the army of Cyrus, without a battle, entered Babylon. Afterwards, after Nabonidus retreated, he was captured in Babylon. Interruption of the rites in Isagila or the temples there was none, and no date was missed. On the 3rd day of the month, Arasamnu, Cyrus entered Babylon. They filled the Haru vessels in his presence. Peace was imposed on the city. The proclamation of Cyrus was read to all of Babylon.
So the fall of Babylon didn't fall the way that Jeremiah said it would. Although it is desolate today, it didn't fall because of a gruesome war waged by an enemy who had no care for the elderly, women, or children, but by one that people called a liberator and a Messiah. In fact, history tells us that after taking Babylon, Cyrus the Great proclaimed himself King of Babylon, King of Sumer and Akkad, King of the four corners of the world, in the famous Cyrus cylinder, an inscription deposited in the foundations of the Esagila temple dedicated to the chief Babylonian god Marduk. The text of the cylinder denounces Nabonidus as impious and portrays the victorious Cyrus pleasing the god Marduk. It describes how Cyrus had improved the lives of the citizens of Babylonia, repatriated displaced peoples, and restored temples and cult sanctuaries. So Babylon wasn't destroyed when Cyrus conquered it. He just overtook and proclaimed himself as the king of Babylon. Marduk wasn't torn down when Cyrus ruled, but was restored. He is actually still being worshipped today, just under another name. The people were not slaughtered in the streets and everyone found thrust through, but they were actually given a better quality of life and all of their gods back. The things that Jeremiah said would happen did not come to pass. Therefore, this is the thing that Yah has not said. Yah wasn't talking about this Babylon, but another to come. Besides, Daniel, who actually lived in Babylon and was physically present when Babylon fell to the Medes and Persians, already told us how Nebuchadnezzar's Babylon fell, and it matches almost exactly with what history says happened. That it basically happened overnight. That the king of the Medes and the Persians just walked in and took over with very little fight. The only difference is that the Bible says that it was Darius the Mede, while history says that it was Cyrus the Persian. Daniel says that Belshazzar was sitting on the throne when the writing on the wall appeared, and history backs him up. Nabonidus, who was the official king of Babylon, was in self-imposed exile in Tama, Arabia. This exile is assumed to have been due to the disagreement with the Babylonian clergy and oligarchy. During this period, Belshazzar acted as regent in Babylonia, while Nabonidus continued to be recognized as the king. So Daniel was correct in his account of the fall of Babylon. The story reads, the book of Daniel, chapter 5. Belshazzar, the king, made a great feast to 1,000 of his lords, and drank wine before the thousands. Belshazzar, while he tasted the wine, commanded to bring the golden and silver vessels which his father Nebuchadnezzar had taken out of the temple which was in Jerusalem, that the king and his princes, his wives, and his concubines might drink therein. Then they brought the golden vessels that were taken out of the temple of the house of Elohim, which was at Jerusalem. And the king and his princes, his wives, and his concubines drank in them. They drank wine and praised the gods of gold and of silver, of brass, of iron, of wood, and of stone. In the same hour came forth fingers of a man's hand, and wrote over against the candlestick upon the plaster of the wall of the king's palace. And the king saw the part of the hand that wrote. Then the king's countenance was changed, and his thoughts troubled him, so that the joints of his loins were loose, and his knees smote one against another. The king cried aloud to bring in the astrologers, the Chaldeans, and the soothsayers. And the king spake, and said to the wise men of Babylon, Whosoever shall read this writing, and show me the interpretation thereof, shall be clothed with scarlet, and have a chain of gold about his neck, and shall be the third ruler in the kingdom. Then came in all the king's wise men, but they could not read the writing, nor make known to the king the interpretation thereof. Then was King Belshazzar greatly troubled, and his countenance was changed in him, and his lords were astonished. Now the queen, by reason of the words of the king and his lords, came into the banquet house, and the queen spake and said, O king, live forever. Let not thy thoughts trouble thee, nor let thy countenance be changed. There is a man in thy kingdom, in whom is the spirit of the holy gods, and in the days of thy father's light and understanding and wisdom, like the wisdom of the gods, was found in him, whom the king Nebuchadnezzar thy father, the king, I say, thy father, made master of the magicians, astrologers, Chaldeans, and soothsayers. For as much as an excellent spirit and knowledge and understanding, interpreting of dreams and showing of hard sentences and dissolving of doubts were found in the same Daniel, whom the king named Belteshazzar. Now let Daniel be called, and he will show thee the interpretation. Then was Daniel brought in before the king, and the king spake and said unto Daniel, Art thou that Daniel, which art the children of the captivity of Judah, whom the king my father brought out of Jewry? I have heard of thee, that the spirit of the gods is in thee, and that light and understanding and excellent wisdom is found in thee. And now the wise men, the astrologers, have been brought in before me, that they should read this writing and make known unto me the interpretation thereof. But they could not show the interpretation of the thing. And I have heard of thee, that thou canst make interpretations, and dissolve doubts. Now if thou canst read the writing, and make known to me the interpretation thereof, thou shalt be clothed with scarlet, and have a chain of gold about thy neck, and shall be the third ruler in the kingdom. Then Daniel answered and said before the king, Let thy gifts be to thyself, and give thy rewards to another. Yet I will read the writing unto the king, and make known to him the interpretation. O thou king, the Most High Elohim gave Nebuchadnezzar thy father a kingdom, and majesty, and glory, and honor. And for the majesty that he gave him, all people, nations, and languages trembled and feared before him. Whom he would, he slew, and whom he would, he kept alive, and whom he would, he set up, and whom he would, he put down. But when his heart was lifted up, and his mind hardened in pride, he was deposed from his kingly throne, and they took his glory from him. And he was driven from the sons of men, and his heart was made like the beasts, and his dwelling was like the wild asses. They fed him with grass like oxen, and his body was wet with the dew of heaven, till he knew that the Most High Elohim ruled the kingdom of men, and that he appointeth over it whomsoever he will. And thou, his son, O Belshazzar, hast not humbled thine heart, though thou knowest all this, but hast lifted up thyself against Yahuwah of heaven, and they have brought the vessels of his house before thee. And thou, and thy lords, thy wives, and thy concubines have drunk wine in them. And thou hast praised the gods of silver and gold, of brass, iron, wood, and stone, which see not, nor hear, nor know. And the Elohim in whose hand thy breath is, and whose are all thy ways, hast thou not glorified. Then was the part of the hand sent from him, and this writing was written. And this is the writing that was written. Mene, Mene, Tekel, Upharsin. This is the interpretation of the thing. Mene, Elohim have numbered thy kingdom, and finished it. Tekel, thou art weighed in the balances, and art found wanting. Peres, thy kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persians. Then commanded Belshazzar, and they clothed Daniel with scarlet, and put a chain of gold about his neck, and made a proclamation concerning him, that he should be the third ruler in the kingdom. In that night was Belshazzar the king of Chaldeans slain, and Darius the Mede took the kingdom, being about 62 years old. According to Daniel, one night, while having a feast, the Most High's hand appeared and writes on the wall. The wise men bring Daniel before the king to interpret the meaning, and Daniel tells him that his kingdom has already been divided between the Medes and the Persians. In that very same night, Belshazzar was slain, and there was a new ruler by morning. Now let's see what history has to say about how ancient Babylon fell.
By 542 BC, Cyrus's attention was focused on another great power ripe for conquest, the so-called Neo-Babylonian Empire. Far from the good old days of Nebuchadnezzar II, the current Babylonian king, Nabonidus, wasn't a good ruler. He diverted favor and funding away from Babylonian priests, neglected the common people, stopped renovation works on the city, and even cancelled the New Year's festival of the great god Marduk. Discontent was rife, and loyalty to the king and his son Belshazzar was at an all-time low, and Cyrus was all too aware of this state of affairs. Persian infiltrators began spreading word throughout Nabonidus's empire that Cyrus intended to restore Marduk's supremacy in Babylon. In 540, sensing that the time was right, Cyrus dispatched his army to seize Babylon-dominated Elam with the help of a native revolt. This blow brought Nabonidus back from his retirement and to Babylon, where he took control of the army. Notoriously, he seized the sacred statues of his many domains in order to ensure their obedience. The next year, Cyrus and his increasingly powerful army marched south to invade the Babylonian Empire, but he would do it as a liberator. However, their progress was blocked for weeks by a swollen tributary of the Tigris River just north of Opis. Although the obstacle was overcome by Persian troops digging many channels around the river to divert its course, this delay allowed Nabonidus to assemble a large army and advance north. The king himself, however, remained ensconced at Sippar, while General Gabara conducted the war. The battle took place in the last days of September near Opis. What we do know is that Cyrus's forces, fighting under the gold and red Shabaz standard, won yet another crushing victory. Opis was plundered, while Gabara surrendered, earning a place in the Persian hierarchy. Nabonidus went south by river. Rather than facing another hostile army in the field, Cyrus instead arrived with his vast host outside the massive, sprawling city of Babylon to find Nabonidus's armies bivouacked inside, braced for an extensive siege. It would, even to the indomitable Cyrus, have been a truly daunting sight. Its defences included multiple layers of moat, the great Euphrates River itself, and two colossal walls, inner and outer, 80 feet high or more, stretching for 15 miles around the city's near triangular circumference. Tidy grid-patterned districts were crisscrossed with streets and occupied by grand-scale residences, temples, palaces, and, most sturdy of all, the great citadel of the Royal Guard next to the Ishtar Gate. As he usually did, King Cyrus called together his advisors for a council of war immediately upon arrival, and debated upon how to best gain the city. A full-scale assault, they decided, would result in massive casualties, so they decided on a complex strategy relying on subtlety, intelligence, and timing. First, to maintain the illusion of a conventional siege, the Achaemenid king split his army in two, stationing one on the eastern bank of the Euphrates, where the river entered Babylon in the north, and the other downstream, where the river left it. Cyrus himself took every non-combatant, including servants, slaves, and attendants, north, arriving soon thereafter at a basin, which had been excavated years earlier to temporarily redirect the river. Putting his men to work for a similar end, Cyrus had a wide channel dug from the disused basin to the river, and chopped giant palm trees down to act as levees to redirect the water. When the earth was removed, a great portion of the Euphrates' flow was diverted into the basin rather than flowing towards Babylon. While Xenophon informs us that the water level before this ingenious work was over 2 men deep, Herodotus states that after, the Euphrates was only waist deep. The impassable river was now a viable entry route into the city. That very night, carefully timed because it marked the advent of a great festival of music, drinking, and revelry in Babylon, Cyrus had Gabara infiltrate the city via the diminished river, which the celebratory citizens or guards of Nabonidus' capital didn't seem to have noticed. The defenders, lulled into a false sense of security by their great strength of defense and enfeebled by drink, were unable to resist the Persian infiltration. By daybreak, Prince Belshazzar was dead, the gates were opened, and the city was under Achaemenid control. Nabonidus, who had actually been in nearby Borsippa, was surrendered to the Persian monarch and then allowed to take a comfortable and by all accounts happy exile in Comania. 2 weeks after he captured the city and dealt with all the necessary formalities, on October 26, 539, Cyrus entered Babylon to a rapturous welcome, restoring Marduk's priesthood to its elevated position and tending to the needs of the people. To further show his benevolence, the new ruler kept taxes to a minimum, completed several public works, and returned idols seized by Nabonidus. The verse account of Nabonidus sums up what the people, or at least the favoured priests, may have felt. They are like prisoners when the prisons are opened. Liberty is restored to those who were surrounded by oppression. All rejoice to look upon him as king. In a famous act that would gain him unabashed plaudits within the pages of the Hebrew Bible, Cyrus the Great returned thousands of Jews who had previously been deported as part of Nebuchadnezzar's so-called Babylonian exile to Jerusalem. Not only did he restore Jews to their homeland, but it's also said that Cyrus ordered the construction and state funding of what eventually became Jerusalem's Second Temple. For this generosity, he was the only foreigner ever to be named a Messiah in the Jewish religion. Without this, it's possible that Judaism would have died out, while Christianity and Islam might never have existed at all.
History seems to match Daniel's story, all except for the name of who was the king, Darius the Mede or Cyrus the Persian. Jeremiah prophesied a bloody massacre, while Daniel gave an account of an easy takeover. Also, Cyrus didn't destroy Babylon and make it desolate, but instead restored Babylon and made a better life for the people, returned the people their gods, and even lowered their taxes. The complete opposite of what Jeremiah said would happen, all the way down to the restoration of Marduk. Although Babylon is desolate today, it wasn't laid waste by the invading armies of the north. Cyrus simply assumed the throne of Babylon, and Babylon continued to flourish for hundreds of years after the Persian takeover. Babylon at best gradually became desolate from people willingly leaving over the centuries. It didn't become desolate by the cause of war. Alexander the Greek would come along 200 years after Cyrus in 331 BC and take Babylon from the Persians. He would also declare himself as the king of Babylon and set his throne there as well. The Jewish Virtual Library says that there were a Jewish community in Babylon from the time of Nebuchadnezzar till the 5th century AD or CE, spanning almost 1,000 years. There were even reports of King Balaam of the Khazarians sent for rabbis from Babylon to come and convert the Khazarians to Judaism in 740 AD. If this is true, then Babylon was still inhabited as late as the 8th century AD, a whole 1,300 years after Cyrus entered Babylon's gates. Jeremiah's prophecy of the fall of Babylon couldn't have been for ancient Babylon. In several verses between Jeremiah chapter 50 and chapter 51, it says that the invading armies shall come from the north, but that word north isn't necessarily used as a direction or a region. If we go to Jeremiah 50 and 3, where it says, "For out of the north there cometh up a nation against her, which shall make her land desolate," and click on our tools and go to the interlinear and look at that word north, H6828, Saphon, it is used as north or northward, like in a direction or region. But the definition of the root word means hidden, dark, lurky, and unknown. You see that? And We also see that definition in both the Brown Drivers Briggs lexicon as well as the Hebrew Chaldee lexicon. Jeremiah 50:3 could be read, "For out of a hidden or unknown or secret place there cometh up a nation against her, which shall make her land desolate, and none shall dwell therein. They shall remove, they shall depart, both man and beast." Not to mention that one could argue that Cyrus and the Persians actually came from the east and not the west. Assyria is north of Babylon. That's why I don't think north was meant to be a direction. Now one might ask, well, what about the Chaldeans? The Chaldeans were a race of people who lived during the time of ancient Babylon. If Jeremiah 50 and 51 are future prophecies, then who are they in the future? And that's a fair question. My answer is that the word Chaldean isn't always referred to a race of people, but it also means the magicians, sorcerers, astrologers, the wisest people in the land, a class of people skilled at interpretations. The Chaldeans are the ones that the king called for to interpret his dream, people with an elite understanding of science and knowledge. In fact, because of his ability to interpret the king's dreams, Daniel was made master over the magicians, astrologers, Chaldeans, and soothsayers. So Jeremiah 50, verse 1 and 35 could be read, "The word that Yah spake against Babylon and against the land of the wise men, or astrologers, or sorcerers, or scientists by Jeremiah the prophet." Or, "A sword is upon the wise men, astrologers, sorcerers, and scientists, saith Yah, and upon the inhabitants of Babylon, and upon her princes, and upon her wise men." Now, Jeremiah chapter 50, verses 4 and 5 says that when Babylon fall, Judah and Israel shall come out of it together, and join themselves to a perpetual covenant that shall not be forgotten. The Bible and history teaches that only the southern kingdom was carried away to Babylon. The northern kingdom was carried away to Assyria 200 whole years prior. Now, some might say that when Nebuchadnezzar took over Assyria, that the northern kingdom was reunited with the southern kingdom. Then when Cyrus gave the decree, they all went out together. The problem with that is, according to Ezra, who was one of the people who came out of Babylon and went back to Jerusalem, the northern kingdom had already left Assyria to find new land. 2 Esdras chapter 13 verse 40 reads, "Those are the 10 tribes which were carried away prisoner out of their own land in the time of Hoshea the king, whom Salmanasar the king of Assyria led away captive. And he carried them over the waters, and so they came into another land. But they took this counsel among themselves, that they would leave the multitude of the heathen and go forth into a further country where never mankind dwelt." Ezra, or Esdras, along with Nehemiah, both came out of Babylon, and they both gave a list of people by their tribes of who came out of Babylon with them, and not one from the northern kingdom was amongst them, according to them. Also, verse 5 says that when they come out of Babylon, they will make a perpetual covenant that shall not be forgotten. This is the new covenant, and we know this because this one shall not be forgotten. Ancient Babylon fell 500 plus years before Christ. That would have meant that we have been in the new covenant already for 500 years before Christ came and died for our sins. We also know that Jerusalem fell in 70 AD, and Israel was scattered to the 4 corners of the earth because the covenant was forgotten. It was after 70 AD that Israel was cut off from their heritage. This is another reason why Jeremiah 50 and 51 could not have been meant for ancient Babylon. That's why Jeremiah called the place he was prophesying about the daughter of Babylon in both chapters. There is only one ancient Babylon that can only be the mother and not the daughter. It's like someone prophesying against the daughter of America. In today's day and time, other people will be like, well, who is the daughter of America? And even if they named someone like China or Japan because they tried to imitate America, the one place that they wouldn't name is America. She would have to be the mother and not the daughter. Therefore, ancient Babylon cannot also be the daughter of Babylon. This is why we don't have to vet the books of Psalms and the book of Isaiah like we did Jeremiah to see if it's prophecies about Babylon or for ancient Babylon or a future Babylon. Because the prophecies in Isaiah match the prophecies in Jeremiah. And they both say the daughter of Babylon, just like Jeremiah and Revelation. So now that we know that the prophecies of the fall of Babylon written in Psalms, Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Revelation are for a future prophecy, and that Daniel's account of the writing on the wall is how ancient Babylon was conquered, we can now use the books of Psalms, Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Revelation to start our search for the whore, aka daughter of Babylon, who rides the beast. After we find her, then we will look for the beast. If it is the Most High's will, the next video will start our search for the whore. Until then, family, stay safe, stay prayed up, and if you don't do anything else, stay focused. Shalom.
Stay focused. Yeah, how we choose, we worship in spirit and truth. Stay focused. Don't be a fool. Study to show thyself approved. Stay focused. It's like blood in my chest. The word manifested in flesh. Stay focused. Hebrew, we got next. I preach the McKells and Dags. Stay focused. Yeah, how we choose, we worship in spirit and truth. Stay focused. Don't be a fool. Study to show thyself approved. Stay focused. It's like blood in my chest. The word manifested in flesh. Stay focused. Hebrews, we got next, so never abandon your post.